Good morning. If you're not on this meeting, we're just going to go around quickly and introduce everybody, except for Dan. But other than the first on here, Dan, I have to start. So my name's David Richmond. I own real estate in town. I sell companies, and I'm currently developing Talcott Mountain Self-Storage, which is down at the southern end of town.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Joe Beal. I am the owner of the Farmers Insurance Agency downtown on Hot Meadow Street, and I'm the current president of the Simsbury Chamber of Commerce.
Good morning. My name is Chris Nelson. We have a construction company in town. We're located right next to millwrights in the mill, and I build and develop different residential projects in town.
Good morning, Jerry Toner. I'm the immediate past president of the Simsbury Chamber of Commerce and board member of the Friends of Simsbury Farms.
Good morning, Lou George. I'm an attorney. Our firm is Hassett & George, located right down the street on Hartford.
Good morning. I'm an interloper from Canton. Bob Vessel, the personal.
Hi, Jamie Rice, JQR Capital, financial planning, investment management, tax preparation firm in Granby. Also head of the ambassador committee for Simsbury Chamber of Commerce.
I'm Bob Crowther, the member of the Town Economic Development Commission.
I'm Diana Moody. I'm with the Farmington Valley Trails Council. I'm on the board, and I'm also on the Simsbury Bike Ped Committee.
Good morning, Sandy Hart, Classic Hotels of Connecticut, officed over at the Simsbury Inn, and we provide accommodations and venues for folks to do events.
Good morning, I'm Dan Correa. I'm an executive search consultant, and I'm on the board of the Simsbury Chamber of Commerce.
Hi, I'm Wendy Maxudis. I'm the first selectman, and I just want to say that if you live in Simsbury, please vote for the budget referendum because we put aside some money to move the Greenway along.
I'm Heather Getz. I'm a member of the Board of Selectmen.
Hi, I'm Gabriella Sandoval. I am an attorney. I represent children and different issues that affect them. I'm also a real estate broker with Berkshire Hathaway in Simsbury.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Tesey. I'm the town engineer in Bloomfield.
Good morning, I'm Diana Hughes and I'm in Bloomfield.
I'm Mike Payne, Payne's Rubbish. I pick up all your stuff.
Good morning, Bruce Decker, publisher and editor of Today Magazine. We cover the heart of Farmington Valley.
Hi, I'm Debbie Thibodeau. I'm on the Simsbury Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee.
George Christensen, part owner and manager, Simsmore Square.
Who's that guy?
Yeah, exactly, right?
This is what you call multitasking. Good morning, I'm Stephen Mitchell, Mitchell Auto Group. I'm also the chairman of the East Coast Greenway Connecticut Council, and very proud to bring this presentation to Simsbury Library. And do you have a proper introduction for Bruce, or am I going to wait?
Just go ahead and introduce yourself now, and then we'll...
Sure.
Okay. He's got too many hats, so I can't even remember it all.
Yeah, so I'm one of those rare people that gets paid to build bike trails, which there aren't very many of us. So I am the Southern New England manager for the East Coast Greenway Alliance, based in Durham, North Carolina. I'm based in Farmington. And I am also the appointed chairman of the Connecticut Greenways Council by the last governor. And I sit on 10 other boards across the state in this space, and then 3 others that are not in this space. So I basically know everybody. I am the past president of the Farmington Valley Trails Council. I did that for 14 years. So I've been in the not-for-profit space for, this would be 22 years now. And my previous career was on Wall Street. Started out as a money manager, ended up in investment banking. The final 2 years I was doing that, I was working out of an office in Chengdu, which is the capital of Sichuan, doing power deals with the Chinese. Talk about a weird thing. Anyway, so that's pretty much it. Is that good enough? Sure. Okay. All right. I will get going if I don't die here with the. I've never seen more cables.
Push that out.
Yeah, I'm just going to kind of make a little hole for myself here. So this is entitled Why MultiUse Greenways. Some of this certainly you will know, but I wanted to frame it this way because there's a lot of bits and pieces to this story that many of you might not know. So I'm going to start off with the Farmington Valley, actually really down to New Haven, and talk about just a couple of projects out there. Terriffill was mentioned, but I'm going to briefly go over that and then get into the nuts and bolts of this actual conversation. The East Coast Greenway, 3,000 miles, has always been talked about as the urban Appalachian Trail. It is over 34% complete as we speak. And so keep this in mind as we're talking about all of these other things. Imagine a multi-use continuous protected path that empowers low-cost, sustainable transportation and safe, accessible point-to-point routes. That's really what this is all about. Some numbers: 15 states and DC, goes through 450 municipalities, and within a walk, essentially, on either side, 25 million people. Okay, I did say I'd talk about projects a bit. This is my homemade map of where the East Coast Greenway is in Connecticut, 200 miles. It's 52% complete right now. And what you see in orange are gaps. So you will notice a big gap, for instance, in Bloomfield going down. The small little gap at the very top of Terriffill is not easy to see, but if you see the Bloomfield tag, that's where I'll be talking about in just a moment. A pretty good size gap, Bloomfield into Western Hartford, and then a couple of smaller gaps in the east, and essentially New Haven to Providence by 2026 is going to be close to 90% done. Now what that means is something super regional in terms of the sheer amount of people that are going to be using it, the tourism aspect, the economic development aspect, and I will talk about that more as we progress here. You will notice down at the bottom of the screen the proposed Merritt Parkway Trail, which currently there isn't an inch built of yet. That's going to be a tough nut to crack. And the East Coast Greenway is still committed to trying to do it, but it's got a big price tag. DOT came out with some project notes, not a full-blown survey, but estimated that piece down there probably would be about $250 million to complete. So it gives you an idea of the costs involved, and I will talk more about the costs in a moment. Projects. The Beeline Trail. New Britain is aggressively working on a project to not only connect Connecticut Fast Track, which, as many of you are aware, kind of just ends kind of in nowhere land, to the Farmington Canal Heritage Trail, which of course is right out here. And the idea would be to create a loop and go through Newington, potentially into Hartford. So keep that in mind as I'm talking about this as well. The Central Connecticut Loop Trail is a little different. That goes down through Middletown and would hit the Farmington Canal Heritage Trail in Cheshire. That's the tail end of the Airline State Park Trail, just so if you ever want to look this stuff up. Charter Oak Trail is out east. That's the last piece. That is a bridge going into Willimantic. The Hot River Trail in East Hartford, that is also the last piece of the Hot River Trail. That's the piece that was never built around Pratt and Whitney. And again, we can talk about all these, but obviously the Terriffill-Bloomfield-Hartford connector is a big deal, right? That is a lot of what I'm going to talk about back and forth here. And then, of course, the Farmington Canal Heritage Trail. So very briefly, this is phase one. Should go to bid literally any time, is my understanding from DOT, to start construction this year, hopefully to complete construction this year, but I don't really know the answer to that. So that is Terriffill Center to the existing Bloomfield Greenway. So basically alongside 189. In conjunction with this, and I know I've talked to the town about this, and I think the town knows this, but when that trail is built alongside 189, we are going to re-sign the East Coast Greenway to go back through the center of Simsbury, where it was always supposed to go originally. And so that's going to be a big boon to the on-road route and to Simsbury in general. That could happen as early as this fall, might happen early next year. Again, it depends on the timetable for this particular project.
Excuse me, Bruce?
Yes?
Do you prefer questions, holding questions to the end?
How much time do we have? Yeah, sure, no, go ahead.
Just a quick question. I was thinking, I think all along that the East Coast Greenway was almost entirely a Rails to Trails project. Is that not the case?
It depends on where you are.
Okay.
So Connecticut is a good example. Rails to Trails, and I'll talk about, by the way, a lot of this, but Rails to Trails started in the early 90s with a federal program that allowed an 80-20 construction grants to happen. And the way it worked was that communities that could afford the 20% match, because don't forget it was a local match, it wasn't a state match, like Simsbury and other communities, who had an abandoned railroad corridor in the public domain, well, it was just easy, because there it was.
Yeah.
So that's why you see so much of the existing trail, that 34% I talked about, on abandoned railroad corridors, because it was the easy thing to do. What we're doing now, the expensive part, are the pieces that were lost, sold, never abandoned in many cases. So now you got to figure out where to put the trail. And I will talk more about that.
When there's not an existing rail.
Exactly right.
Pre-existing over.
Exactly right. And you know, it's something of a can of worms. We can get into rail with trail, which we have hardly any of in Connecticut because of the liability laws. But I'm gonna start getting off topic. So I'll Plainville. So Plainville Phase 1 is 85% designed right now. That is from Town Line Road to Norton Park. This should go to bid later this year. This is excellent news because Plainville really is the last town in Connecticut that hasn't adopted the trail system. And New Haven, I have New Haven here because of exactly your question. This is 1.6 miles, almost $11 million. So think about that for a minute. This is a bike trail, right? Incredibly hard to build. It was supposed to go next to the FBI building. They would not allow it. So in fact, this goes underneath part of New Haven. It's a tunnel, which is one of the reasons why it's costing so much money. And then it's going to be alongside Olive Street down to Water Street, and suddenly mile 0 of the Farmington Canal Heritage Trail will be complete sometime around December this year. It's already in construction right now. Okay, so here's the main portion of your program today. Why build greenways? So, trails promote a reinvigoration of municipal centers. They boost spending in communities and influence relocations to those areas. Walkable, bikeable communities are more desirable attractive places to live, and trails increase community tax revenues. And I'm going to get into this in more detail. This is the pre-detail. Biped is transportation. ConnDOT now views mobility in terms of people and not just the unrestricted movement of vehicles. Walking is our primary form of transportation. All trips anywhere involve some element of perambulation. You've got to walk to your car, for God's sake. I mean, you know. So here's the metric. A balanced transportation system equals motor vehicles and trucks and what have you, obviously, transit, bicyclists, and pedestrians. And that's pretty much recognized now as reality across the country. Now, having said that, there's really not enough room or money anymore to build new trails and highways. You'll see DOT, in fact, they're thinking right now of putting another lane on 84 out in Danbury, for instance, but they've got the land to do it there. But think about around here. Think about actually building a road around here. I mean, is it even realistic? Trails far and away have the best impact per dollar spent. That's the return on investment. I'll get into that in more detail, of transportation projects. Biped infrastructure makes public transit more effective in meeting travel needs through multimodal connectivity. That's planner speak for being able to get to a bus or a train using a bike or walking. Alternative transportation is a growing part of policy. I harp on connectivity a lot, but if you have to drive your car to get to a trail, it kind of defeats the purpose a little bit, doesn't it? So complete streets policies and ordinances, sidewalks, connector trails, bicycle facilities, share the road signage, even the dreaded sharrows, which I'm not a huge fan of, but Simsbury has quite a few sharrows. They're an important policy statement by a community. Infrastructure is another. Streetscape amenities, bike racks, benches, landscaping, lighting, public art. The key here is better access to more destinations, providing healthy choices in how you can get where you want to go without relying on a car. So we talk about linear parks. The original reason to build multi-use rail to trails was in fact purely recreational back in 1991 when the original Ice-T Act passed. So that's what we were talking about. I don't think anyone truly realized the potential outcomes. Communities with trails are more sought after. People want a town where there are safe and accessible ADA-compliant facilities for all users. When I say ADA, of course, that's the Americans with Disabilities Act, right? So if you see somebody with a motorized wheelchair on the trail, we love them. That's where they should be. They should not be out in traffic. So those repurposed corridors are retained permanently as improved community open space. And finally, tailored cultural linear park amenities can be a great community builder, enhancing local awareness, historical identity, and pride of place. By the way, I gave part of this presentation as a doctoral, it was 2 hours long, as a doctoral presentation at Montclair State in New Jersey. So you're getting some of the doctoral pieces here as well, just so you know. I toned it back a little bit. Yeah. I figured you might like that. Let's see. Am I on the right slide? I think I am. Okay, Americans drive cars 1.5 trillion miles a year. 5 to 8% fewer vehicle miles are traveled in communities with good walking and cycling facilities. Safe routes to school are critical. Parents driving their children to school make up 25% of morning commuters in suburbia. If kids walked or biked to school at 1969 levels, it would save 3.2 billion vehicle miles, 1.5 million tons of CO2, 89,000 tons of other pollutants, heavy metals, etc. The healthcare costs of air pollution are a minimum of $10 billion a year. So we go back to ROI now here. Residents are overwhelmingly positive. Trail towns lure younger professional citizenry. They create community identity and pride. There is a great demand across Connecticut. I see it every day. Just as an aside, as my hat on with the chairman of the Connecticut Greenways Council, we vet all of the applications for the Connecticut Recreational Trails Program. That was $3 million this year. We got 65 applications totaling a little less than $21 million for that $3 million. So it gives you an idea of the pent-up demand out there for these projects. And by the way, none of these were fancy, huge projects. DOT does those. That's where the big money goes. These are the smaller projects, connectivity, places out in Western Connecticut and Far Eastern Connecticut, where they don't attract the money that we do here for the Canal Heritage Trail and other of the big multi-use trails that are very expensive to build. Most of these trails I'm talking about are stone dust. They're 10 feet wide, they're easier to build, they're much cheaper to build, and they go from place to place and connect people. Oh, one more thing to talk about. So trail-based tourism, and I'm going to talk in this study that I'm going to talk about. We'll talk more about this, but it creates annual revenues of millions in direct spending, making businesses more profitable, and increasing the tax base of the town they're in. Trails reinvigorate municipal centers. I don't really need to talk. This crowd has drunk that Kool-Aid. We all know what the trail does for Simsbury. So safe and convenient bike ped access enables more individuals full participation in the local economy. And this is especially important in urban settings. Real estate prices are higher in walkable, bikeable communities. A number of studies have proven that homes near trails sell faster for more money. And by the way, before I start on this, which is the real meat of this story, if any of you want to get in touch with me, I have a stack of cards. If you'd like a bibliography of a lot of this background information, please get in touch with me. I'll be happy to send you all sorts of links to things. This is really an amalgam of, up till now anyway, of a lot of those websites. The Rails to Trails Conservancy is one, but there's a bunch of others, obviously. People for Bikes. So this study was commissioned by the East Coast Greenway in conjunction with our Mid-Atlantic Bike Ped Summit that was held in Philadelphia exactly 3 years ago. So this is a relatively new study. Remember I mentioned New Haven to Providence. As I am addressing this study, which has in its center Philadelphia, think about New Haven to Providence. It's almost exactly the same length. The demographics are very similar. There are similar bodies of water that this goes next to. And so that's the reason why I picked this particular study to talk to you about today, because it's really kind of apples and apples. And you'll see as I go along. All right, so here it is. This is the study corridor. Note that the route goes through the population centers and parallels the major watershed, the Delaware River Basin. It is not by accident that the East Coast Greenway has always been viewed as the urban Appalachian Trail. Also note the similarities to the Farmington Valley through Greater Hartford as well, as I mentioned. And remember that connectivity is the key. So here's the connectivity. And you'll note that if you think about New Haven to Providence, there's a similar amount of trails. There's a similar population. This is very interesting to me. So demographics are critical to this whole story. And again, more breakdown of who's there and some basic numbers. Let me see if I can. Oops. Didn't want to do that. Okay. I'm trying to see this. I didn't bring my glasses. Yeah, I know. It's us old folks. This is some quotes from some folks in Philadelphia. Investing in and prioritizing the East Coast Greenway to complete key section in underserved communities will both safely connect residents to employment and education and help reduce traffic fatalities. I bring this up because I'm sure you've all noticed that not so much with bicyclists, but with pedestrians, traffic fatalities have risen quite dramatically in the state and continue to. Part of it is from the quote-unquote COVID response to getting outside, but part of it is the fact that people are driving faster. There's less and less. What's a good way to put this? Police presence, and it's caused a genuine problem, particularly in our cities. And so we see that all the time. Girl got killed in Berlin riding her bike last month on a piece of road that should have had a bike trail next to it, but was not rebuilt. Was rebuilt 3 years ago, but had no sidewalk and no bike trail next to it. And the 14-year-old girl was mown down by a guy in a truck. So, this does happen. Okay, some numbers. Estimated construction costs. Around here, fully built out, multi-use trail, paved, with a few amenities, fencing, is a minimum of about $1.5 million a mile. Add in engineering, and by engineering, I say bridges in particular, but also, I don't know, culverts, anything really that has to have some sort of engineering automatically bumps up the cost. And I go back to that crazy cost in New Haven where you've got, I don't know what that is. What is that? $5 million a mile, which is crazy. So how much could the total build-out cost be? And of course, the overarching question is it worth it? It's estimated that the remainder of the East Coast Greenway in Connecticut should take only about $300 million. By the way, that's $250 million of the Merritt Parkway Trail, which in my opinion will never get completely built. There are pieces of the Merritt Parkway where the geology is such that you're not building a trail. It's going to go somewhere else. But I say that because about $50 million would complete all these pieces that I was just talking about, those other pieces. So with return on investment for these types of built-out bike ped projects of between 2 and 8 years, the answer is in fact yes. They do pay for themselves. And in fact, in relatively short order, when you look at a very large capital project, let's say the Interstate 91 flyover ramps in New Haven to 95 that were completed about 5-6 years ago. That was a multi-billion-dollar project. And I remember standing next to then Commissioner, good friend of mine, Jim Redeker of Connecticut DOT, and asking him some of these pointed questions, which he hated, but I asked anyway. But I got a response to one of them, which was, what's the return on investment for a project like this? And he started laughing, and he said, there isn't one. There's no way we would ever earn this money back. So it's a little sobering thought, isn't it, when you think about that? Billions and billions of dollars to build another lane of 84 out in Danbury, which is what it's going to cost. It's going to cost in the billions to do that. But that's what they're proposing to do. They've got the land to do it. Why not? Okay, so what's the impact on housing close to a trail corridor? Now remember, these are relatively conservative numbers. $9,400 premium per unit. Now don't forget that much of this corridor is similar in density, with the exception of downtown Philadelphia. That would be obviously, you know, much more dense than, say, Hartford, for instance. So take a little bit off these numbers for Greater Hartford, but still impressive numbers. And within a quarter mile, don't forget, this is walking distance. This is not biking distance. Biking distance is considered to be 1 to 3 miles. The economics of tourism. We don't talk about that enough here because what's going to happen, it already is happening. We know this. We know there's tourism coming to Simsbury, coming to Greater Hartford because of the fact that the trail is getting more and more built out. As it gets more built out, we will see more companies. Like we saw last year, there were a couple of different groups. One of them is Tailwinds, I think, and there's another one that did, in fact, multi-day tours of the East Coast Greenway through this town and other towns across the state as well. We're going to see more of that because, in fact, there's a guy who's starting in Key West, and he's going to run the entire East Coast Greenway this summer. He just started 3,000 miles. The guy's insane, but I'm impressed. You know, he's thinking of doing around 40 miles a day. I don't know how you do that, but anyway, there's people out there that are using this trail, and they're spending money, and that's what these dollar amounts are about. So these dollar amounts, to my mind, are in fact accurate for this area. Yes.
I mean, this is one of the reasons a lot of us are here.
Yeah.
How do you drill down for this trail in this community? I mean, that's a very global number. So how do we, a lot of us in this room actually have property on the trail?
Yep.
Or have tenants on the trail?
Yep.
So how do we drill down to say, you know, this is what this trail brings to this community? And one other thing, I'm really glad I didn't bring my wife today, or I'd be riding my bike to work tomorrow.
I know, well, yeah.
I'm hearing her in my ear right now.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Well, anyway, I am so glad you asked that question, because there are ways to do this. One of which is, and I was instrumental, in fact, I was one of the founders of the Connecticut Trail Census, which is cttrailcensus.uconn.edu. And I'll send you all of these links. But a critical component to this, because there are trail counters across the state, including the Farmington Valley Trails counters. There's 6 on the Farmington Canal Heritage Trail, including one, is it in Simsbury? It is in Simsbury, yes. So there's real numbers out there. And not only are they real numbers, but they're year-over-year numbers for the last 5 years. Suddenly, you get a really good idea of who's using the trail because you've got empirical data. Then what you do is you go back to established background data, United States Park Service, Rails to Trails Conservancy, People for Bikes, there's a lot of others, League of American Bicyclists. They've all got factors that you can use within one tolerance to another tolerance. And essentially what you always do, including these numbers, is you take the median, you take the middle, and you come up with a legitimate number for who's spending money, what percentage of the population is doing that, what percentage of the population is local. So I'll give you an example. If you're a user of the trail and you're local, you're likely going to a bike shop to buy new tires. You're likely out and seeing the market. Oh, I'll buy some bread. That's factored in. So that's the short answer to your question. There's a long answer, but I don't know if you want the long answer. But that's essentially how you do it. Is you go back to the original data set and then work forward from that. Did that help everybody?
We have a newsletter, Simsbury.bike, and I do summarize some of that trail count data that's specific for Simsbury. So if you wanted a quick glance, I can give you my business card. I'm trying to find which issue it was in, but the numbers were significantly up for Simsbury post-pandemic. So.
Yep.
We'll post that information. When this presentation is available on the chamber website, we'll post some of that information as well.
Yep, and I wanted to leave this particular slide with the fact that as there's a shift in the percentage of locals using the trail, the percentage of super regionals using the trail, and then the percentage of tourists using the trail, this number starts to skyrocket because tourists, quote unquote, are getting a hotel room. They're going out to eat at a restaurant. They're spending, it's estimated, and there's a number of really good studies on this, somewhere between $117 and $250 a day if they're coming through as a tourist. As opposed to a local is spending $7 to $19 a day. And that goes back to, getting something at a bike shop or, a peripheral, right, for a local. Okay, we almost never talk about this one, and I'm not going to belabor it too much, but this is real empirical data, and it's a major component of the healthy argument. The healthy argument essentially is this: if you're out and not using your car, you're doing something that's probably good for your body. And it comes back, not so much in terms of anything concrete at the time, it comes back in terms of what you save in future health costs if you hadn't made the trip. Does that all make sense? So that's really what the health argument is. And it continually surprises me. We've got a lot of major healthcare corporations here in the state that haven't quite glommed onto this yet. I find that fascinating. That because in other areas, we've got public-private partnerships. I think of Southern Jersey and Philadelphia in particular, the Circuit Trail. If you get a chance, look up the Circuit Trail, how the Circuit Trail was built. It was built with almost no federal money. It was built by the William Penn Foundation and independent community corporations, which I find fascinating. And by the way, I also find that you don't look for that in Connecticut. It hasn't happened yet. But wouldn't it be fun if it did? Environmental. We don't talk about this much either. We talked briefly about air pollution, but there's many other components to that discussion, and here are some of those components. And I won't delve into this too much other than certain projects can be done. And I bring this up because we will have this discussion. I know we will have this discussion about Terrafill 3 because there's talk about it going next to the river. If it goes next to the river, we've got the folks who have been bending my ear, and I'm sure they've been bending yours too, from the Farmington River Watershed Association, amongst others, who are concerned about that. To a certain extent, rightly so. However, there are ways to build these trails, and my dear friends, the Bronx River Alliance in New York, who I've worked with for many, many years, are doing a piece of trail called Starlight 2, which is a connector along the Bronx River. That trail is not just a trail project, that is a riverbank reclamation project. Along with, by the way, building a trail next to it. Oh, and by the way, it's not asphalt, it's actually porous material that they're building the trail out of. So it doesn't have the water runoff problems that regular asphalt does. There are ways to do these that are successful. And I hope that the study that we've got coming up with a CROG will help that. We'll see. But there's a lot of ways to skin the environmental cat, as it were. And best practices as it relates to engineering and design of these facilities is starting to come full circle. So I really wanted you to know that. Okay, so the executive summary. Some interesting numbers here. That $2.2 billion number is actually fairly accurate. Don't forget, that's very much a one-time number in the sense that a lot of those initial paybacks start to go away. You know, as the return on investment gets paid off, it starts to dwindle down in terms of overall amounts of money. And then what you do is you go back to, this is earnings now essentially, right? Then you go back to tourism and the other things that are yearly numbers, right? These are really more construction cost numbers is what these are. So, but do keep them in mind. These are real numbers. All right, important things. I briefly mentioned this $500,000 Greater Hartford Gap study. TerraFill, I just saw the scope, by the way, last Thursday, which is complete. I added my notes to it. Just so you're aware, it looks like I'm going to be on the technical advisory committee for this. So DOT wants me on the committee, so I will do that. And this is important because there is now language in the scope document that includes TerraFill, which is fantastic because I view the $300,000 for construction in the budget as a perfect component to this, basically in parallel, because what VHB and FHI, who are the design consultants that won the bid, are going to do over the next year is essentially go through and figure out where the trail should go and offer 1, 2, 3 alternatives potentially. Whether it goes through Governor's Bridge, whether it, wherever it goes. Does it touch at the river at only 1 or 2 points, for instance? Does it go around the peninsula? I kind of doubt it. Among other things, if you really wanted to do that, you're looking at God knows how long for the permitting process with inland wetlands, Army Corps of Engineers, DEEP, SHPO. You name the people that are going to come out of the woodwork and try to slow that project down. So that literally starts now. Like I said, I saw the scope on Thursday. I would expect the go-ahead initial meetings to be held first week of May. So this is very good news for this community because that project's going to be ongoing. Is the budget vote going to be May 3rd still?
Yeah, May 3rd.
May 3rd? Good. Good. I'm going to be watching closely, as you can imagine. Yeah, no, because I think having those two things together basically moves that project forward probably 2 or 3 years. Just because of the fact that the design money is there already. I think it's critically important. So statewide urban, suburban, rural connectivity is finally happening again. And again, don't divorce the Gold Coast from this. You know, I think that we're going to get some sort of connectivity with Westchester County and New York sooner rather than later. But obviously, the jewel of this story is New Haven to Providence, as you can imagine, because it's almost going to be all built. Funding, state bonding. I mentioned the recreational trails. I spent a lot of time lobbying over the last month or two. Recreational trails is going to go in 23 from $3 million to $6 million. And there's other money out there. LOTSIP comes to mind. I know that part of what Simsbury's building in Terriffill is in fact LOTSIP money. There's other pots of money out there as well. Statewide mapping and user data. Potential for federal stimulus. We talked about that briefly. And I think the key thing is the partnership of elected officials, town staff, and advocates moves projects forward in a big way. One last slide, I promise. Multi-practice cooperation. And this goes back a little bit to talking about the Farmington River Watershed Association and assorted people that would love to see no trees cut down, no trail through the town parks, et cetera, et cetera. Do they have a point? Well, they've got a certain point. I would argue that yes, you do have to cut some trees down. You have to. But I would argue, weigh that against the opportunity for the community to access that land and that river. And suddenly you've got a whole new thought process, which is you've got this open space that is retained in perpetuity for the town, and you've got connectivity for people to go back and forth without a bike. I think about the school in Terriffill. There's a natural trail to that school. How cool would that be for kids to be able to ride their bikes to that school? How cool would it be for kids in Terriffill to be able to ride to Simsbury Center? Where right now, that's not a fun ride. It just isn't, you know. So think about the transportation greenway concept. And then here's how you can get me. Like I said, I've got cards. I was going through a box of stuff from my father's house and found Archie. That's my great-grandfather, who was a board track cyclist. What is that, 125 years ago? Wow. So anyway, I thought I'd leave you with Archie. But do you want to say something?
Yeah, no, I just...
Yes.
What kind of cyclist did you call him again?
A board track cyclist. So, yeah, so back in the day, have you seen, it's mostly an Olympic sport now.
I think so.
These big ovals.
Yeah.
That's essentially what he was doing.
Wow.
Because notice, no brakes.
So, yeah, I just wanted to add a couple things. Be it that we're in a silver level bicycle friendly community, one thing that I will add to this, which is more of a League of American Bicyclists than it is East Coast Greenway, but it all connects, is that this year the League of American Bicyclists, the qualifications for bicycle friendly community has changed. They've actually dropped enforcement, the 5 E's, as many of you know about, and they've added equity as one of the E's. And the one thing that really does is, we're all friends, and Stanley Hawthorne, please put your hand up, has joined us. Stanley's the new town manager for Bloomfield. So when Bruce and I went to see Stanley last fall, And, you know, Bruce and I are doing our pitch. You know, Stanley says, look, I was town manager, mayor down in Florida I've been working on the East Coast Greenway for 15, 20 years now. I know the benefits that the Greenway can have for our community. And with all those things that we have in common to connect Simsbury, the Farmington Valley, to Canton, to Avon, Simsbury, Bloomfield, actually a little sliver in Windsor, to our capital city. The economic benefit, you know, when I went to see Farming Valley, Amy over at Farming River Watershed Association, she was emphasizing how this 3,000-mile greenway. I said, Amy, it really doesn't matter. This is a greenway that connects neighborhoods within Simsbury. This will connect Terrifield.
That's actually an important point.
This connects Terrifield. This connects Simsbury to Bloomfield. This connects Simsbury to Hartford, our capital city. This is really more of a local focus. This will allow, you know, I'm a multi-transportation guy. I'm a pilot. I'm a car dealer. And another person, I'd like Diana Hughes. Her husband and I had the same fate, different results. I'm very lucky. I went backwards through the windshield of a car back in 1988. And I know how that feels to get hit from behind by a car and travel on the windshield for a few seconds. And Paul was my brother. My brother were neighbors, and Paul passed away after that accident. So, and that's exactly where the trail is going. And I would strongly recommend that Bloomfield, Simsbury name that section of trail in honor of your husband. Because every time I go there, I just think, God, if there's only a trail here. But
soon.
So, but on a positive note, I've seen these greenways through Richmond, through Baltimore, through Washington, D.C., and I see how the East Coast Greenway connects communities and is used very much every day. Washington, D.C., you go down next to Washington Reagan Airport, you'll see thousands of people going to Washington, D.C., and they're traveling faster than the cars next to them, right next to them. But that's all I've got. Any questions? Yes, questions?
Anybody?
I have a question.
I know you would.
I have three, but I'll try to. First of all, I'm going to ask him, are you exploring, the IIJA, the infrastructure bill? There's supposed to be a lot of money in there for trails and stuff like that, regionally too. So
yes, so we're coming out with a policy paper on that, I think like within days. There's finally been some guidance from the feds on that. And the answer is yes. Apparently it looks to us like those monies can be used for a lot of bike ped facility stuff.
and then, I'm first selectman, let me ask my question. The other thing the other thing is, there's a lot about electric bikes. They just did a thing at the Capitol.
Yeah, in fact, I was there at that. Yep.
Is that an allowable?
Yes. Yes.
And then how does that impact the walkers? You don't have to answer that, but that's just a concern.
No, I want to answer that because I've got the first selectman here.
Okay.
So there's two answers to that. First of all, there's 3 classes of quote-unquote e-bikes. The first 2 classes are allowed on the multi-use trails. So that includes the Farmington Canal Heritage Trail. Class 1 and Class 2 are considered to be assist bicycles. Class 3s have a throttle. They're more like yeah, I mean, basically a glorified mini bike. And they go fast. They go over 30 miles an hour, some of those. So what's been discussed at a number of levels, and I have seen in New Jersey, downstate a little bit here, certainly in the Boston area, is municipal speed limits on the trails. 15 miles an hour is common. I've seen 13.5 in New Jersey. The idea being that you're reining in by public fiat the speeders out there. Now, Having said that, the vast majority of people use them as an assist. There are a number of people, and by the way, that's why they qualify to be used on the trail, it's considered to be Americans with Disabilities Act assist. Similar to a wheelchair, quite frankly. But again, speed limits, right? So if you're coming up on somebody, two ladies walking their babies in strollers, and you're going 30 miles an hour, well, shame on you. That's insane. So we do have to figure that out. To a certain extent, bike trails self-police, particularly around here, because there's so many people using them, that what happens is you get shouted down if you're being a real jerk, right? Having said that, wouldn't it be nice to periodically have some of our bicycle patrols in the Farmington Valley out and catching, one or two miscreants and throwing out a ticket now and then? I think it would help. So that's the long answer to your question.
I would think that it would be relatively infrequent that people are going 30 miles an hour.
It is, and again, this goes back to the fact that the trails at certain times of day and certainly the weekends tend to be packed. So it's hard to do that. But can you still? Yeah, you can still go pretty fast on the trails if you want to. Anything else? Yes.
I guess when it comes to the trail, I was always under the impression that it was one linear trail that was 3,000 miles long, and eventually going to be that. I didn't realize that there were going to be a lot of feeder trails into it, and I guess that exists. I wasn't familiar with that. And the other thing is that this connectivity from town to town, New Haven to Providence, for example, that's valuable to someone, I would believe, who's a cyclist. And only to a cyclist, because it seems like the majority of people that use the trail here in Simsbury are pedestrians, and they're walking rather than cycling. And so
you bring up
activity is valuable to them, because I can't imagine people that are walking the Haven to Providence.
You bring up an interesting point, because if you look at the counter data, we were talking about the counter data, they do intercept surveys along with the laser counter data. So they know sexes, ages to a certain extent, who's wearing a helmet, those types of things. But the key issue is, from my point of view, is who's on a bicycle and who's walking. And in your mind, think this. In urban areas, New Haven, Hartford, Providence, to just use this corridor we're talking about 70% pedestrians, 30% bicyclists. Out here, flip that, right? 70% bicyclists, 30% walkers. And that's pretty much accurate. It depends, again, where you are. As you go further out into the hinterlands, say out on the Airline State Park Trail in eastern Connecticut, you're getting a few walkers, but they're all locals because they're basically walking their dog, and everyone else is on a bike because they're going someplace. And there's a lot less traffic.
How is that data gathered?
The intercept surveys are actually in-person surveys. And they do that on purpose because the laser counters need to be calibrated. They come out of the box as a laser counter, right? And so you set up the counting box, and it emits a laser, but it has to go across so that it can be broken. When it's broken, it counts.
And you can tell you can distinguish between the pedestrian and the bicyclist?
No, that's the point. You can't.
Oh, okay.
So, and also they have to be a certain height so you don't get dogs and deer. Well, sometimes you get deer. Yeah. You certainly get bears. But there's ways to get around that. But the critical issue when you're doing an intercept survey is you want to figure out, first of all, if it's counting correctly. So what you do is you go back to the count for the hours that you're doing the in-person survey, and you match the in-person survey with the laser survey, and you tweak the laser counter so that it's counting the way you did in person, if that makes sense, right? So, and you have to do that at least once a year. Mostly we do it twice a year, spring and fall.
Bob, from Collinsville, how does the trail impact count over the years? Wow.
It's been phenomenal.
Yes.
We get, I think the count is about 160,000
Yeah, that sounds right.
visitors a year. Wow. It's probably one of the most active trails, I think, in the entire system. I would say it has been probably one of the major drivers of the rebirth of Collinsville. Because any event that goes on in that little seed center, town center, gets seen by all these bikers, walkers, you name it. They're seeing it, they're stopping, and it's become a destination.
Heather?
Do you have any information on the cost to maintain the trails?
Yes, there is. In fact, Simsbury itself has some information because they do a good job, in my opinion, along with Farmington and East Granby and some other municipalities that don't necessarily have a line item in the budget, but they've got, the highway department essentially, the DPW, knows they've got to be out and they do it. Yes, there was a study done by the Rails to Trails Conservancy not that long ago, and I can shoot that to you.
Okay, great. I just want to add to what Bob just said in terms of Collinsville, because he realized the value of the trails. And again, we want to make sure that people refer to it as multi-use bicycle trails. A lot of people tend to do that, so that's really important to make that difference. But he realized the value that people were getting, they were getting so many questions about the trails that they didn't know, that he asked the Farmington Valley Trails Council to set up a particular every weekend for the farmers market, which we do on Sunday. So we'll start again this year. And it was just, first of all, it was a lot of fun. It was a great outreach. We reached a lot of people. And a lot of people just thought that the trail was just in Collinsville. They didn't even know, they had no idea. So you do reach a lot of people, you give them a lot of information, we give them maps, we do all those things. So my suggestion to Simsbury would be to do your own in-person count. And you need to do it on weekends, and you need to do it both Saturday and Sunday. And sit on Iron Horse Boulevard. That way you can distinguish, and the Trails Council has done it before too. You want to help us with the safety of everyone. You want to know if they're walking or riding a bicycle. So you want to distinguish that because our counter is actually a corridor between Iron Horse and 315. So, and again, you don't get that. You just get how many people are going back and forth. So now you know what it is, you can go walk back and forth.
Yep, but
so, Simsbury might want to consider that.
okay, but I would say if you did that, think about doing it somewhere else as well that's outside of Simsbury Center, because very similar to Collinsville Center, you're going to have more walkers because obviously you're going to have more walkers, right? So what you want is a blended number for the town. So for instance, if you went down to the Burlington town line on the river trail, that's what I would do if you wanted a blended count for Collinsville, for instance. So yeah, but I agree with that.
And that's how you get that, just by them just physically seeing that at the farm market in this and that, and I think that's it's hard to do unless you're there, unless you're physically there seeing it like you do.
One other point that the Trails Council added to the market, aside from sort of dispelling rumors and expanding people's understanding of what the trail is and what it can do for them, they gave away and also sold these little backpacks that allowed people who were visiting the market to put their groceries in the bag and then keep going, either walking or biking or however they were going. It was just another use that they had not considered. as something that you do on that trail. So you just keep introducing them to more and more of the trail's capabilities. It increases usage and makes people happy. You also create some connections. One of the other groups that we had there was the river stewards.
Yep.
You know, so now we've got the trail and we've got the river. So it's multi-recreation, if you will.
Yeah, and in fact, you know, I could spend another 2 hours just on education.
You could?
Oh, I could. I really could, yes.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.